Gautam Saab was our colleague at University of Rajasthan, and he has made my task much easier. So I will not go with any sort of context. My context is very simple, that right from my when I was doing PhD, then I got some sort of setback as far as the measurement of attributes are concerned. All those sorts of tests which we were using, and that was my PhD, how I could show that it is not the content which is important, it is the response style. So I will keep into consideration. I'll come. This is the three things which I want to share with you, to bring out different formulation of well-being, happiness, emotions, to present critique of Western formulation, and to argue for the culture-based understanding of these concepts. The whole presentation by Professor Gautam was on culture specific. The whole concept, if you will say, we have to understand first the theoretical and the conceptual clarity before actually doing any sort of research or trying to undergo for some practice and all that. It's a multifaceted concept. It's simply, sometimes we refer different levels. It's the well-being of the individual or well-being of the society, or as positive psychologists say, well-being or good institutions. Now this is different levels, and therefore it is multifaceted. It is a process as well as a product. It is a state as well as a process. So I will not go into the detail because of the paucity of time. It's a normative, it's linked with quality of life. Well-being always depend on the type, quality of life. If you will see our poor village, the population below poverty line, and I come from Bhopal, where the greatest gas tragedy has taken. If you will meet those persons, you will forget how to console them and how to use your psychology for their well-being if there is no help and no support. So it's a normative and value-laden concept. The concept has come from positive psychologists as subjective well-being. I fail to understand this adjective, subjective well-being. Definitely it refers to the individual level well-being. When they are saying subjective well-being, well-being is well-being. For the individual it is subjective, maybe subjective. And he has pointed out two sorts of component of this subjective well-being. That is emotional well-being, which contains long-term positive affective state. And second is the cognitive component, which states satisfaction and meaning in life. So that we have already talked much in several of the presentations during this conference. I'll come across with certain cultural models, and here you will see that why I'm talking about cultural models. They are different from culture to culture, and dominant social situation that exactly is responsible for particular emotional experiences. We are living in a society. We are not living in vacuum, and therefore those social situations, dominant particular social situations, actually decides what type of emotional experiences which we will have. There are two broadly in psychological literature you will find. There is independent cultural models, for example USA or the Western country. Independent. The individual is free to carry on one's own goal and fulfill his desire and aspirations and whatnot. That is independent cultural models. and there are dependent cultural models. That is, the whole Asian countries, you will find the dependent cultural model. That is a model which is based on family tradition, and people think and expect supports from the society, from all the persons, from the family members, from the relatives, and so on and so forth. This is dependent cultural model. Now what is happening, the effect of these models on emotion? There are studies, these are on the basis of research I am quoting all this. Invest more weight to pleasant emotions. More weight. This is a study conducted by Kitayama, Marcus and Kitayama. You might have come across with these references. These investigators, they have compared the Americans and the Japanese, and they come across that when it was asked that what are your preferred emotional experiences, then they will only narrate the positive experiences. Whereas the Japanese, they give equal weight to positive and negative emotions. You see, in the last lecture, Professor Kiran Kumar was talking about that pain and pleasure, it goes side by side. Now, if you see the whole psychology, what is the basis, theoretical basis, from where psychology has emerged? And that is the Western thesis of self-contained individualism. This is the phrase which has been given by American itself, self-contained individual. And this is the enormous implications that individual is at the center and rest is at the periphery, and individual is free to achieve one's own goal and aspirations, and society at the secondary level. Society should, state should provide all those conditions in which individuals can sustain and can develop one's own aspirations and achievements. So individual, it's a dominant, highly individualized society. You know, even if you will go their socialization process, then you will come to know this. Well-being in all its hedonistic quality. That is the situation in West, that hedonistic quality, they talk about joy, excitement, comfort, possession of wealth, personal achievement, and so on and so forth. There is a individual versus society, there is a tension between that. The most of the time they are talking about individual's freedom and do not bother about where the society is going about. They will talk about the rights, not about the duties. That is the individual versus, so there is a tension between them. And there is unending competition. And this competition has been accelerated with the global and free market economy, as we are ourselves is experiencing that. There is a competing paradigms in psychology. Psychology is not one. Those who are reading history of psychology, and those who are reading even some of the recent developments which are taking place, we are talking about competing paradigms in psychology, and as you know, it has led to the a very good book. If you have not seen, please see it, Scientific Revolution by Kuhn, K-U-H-N, Kuhn. What he is trying to say is that psychology has not developed as a science. It's still not developed as a science, because they are talking about various paradigms, but all these paradigms are based on positivistic approach. Positivistic approach is give importance to experimentation, to quantitative research, to measurement and all that. This has also been now questioned even by American psychologists, that this positivistic approach, we were expecting that psychology will be a science, something like a physics in some day. But we are really having some critical viewpoint about that how psychology can be that sort of real science, because students of psychology often say, well, it's a science, we are predicting, we are measuring, we are controlling and all that, but still then there is some hesitation if you are talking with a physicist or with any students of natural science. You will feel somewhat shy about saying psychology. It's a objectivity in knowledge. Good life, what is good life for them? A fit between aspiration and achievement. So what you are aspiring and what you have achieved, then you are measuring this gap and saying whether the person is having some sort of happy movement or not. Lack of fit means problems of mental health. Professor Gautam has talked much about that. Deficit in the individual. That is the point from where positive psychology has come. Now you see, well-being in positive psychology. This I will not elaborate much. Focus on strengths and virtues, pursuance of happiness and nurturing of genius and talent, development of self-worth, be in flow, deeply engagement in activity, find signature strength of the individual and authentic happiness. All these points need to be critically evaluated. Those who have read Professor Krishna Kumar, he was mentioning about the American psychologist issue, where all the papers were related to positive psychology. And there, Seligman himself has written, and that generally we forget about it. He wrote that now the country is prosperous, it's worthy, and let us see that how this prosperousness and this peace in the country can motivate psychologists to find out the positive attributes, positive traits and strengths and so on and so forth. Now, they are presuming that there is a context, and context is a sort of context of prosperity, having lot of wealth and peace, and then we talk about positive psychology. This dichotomy of positive and negative emotions is superficial. This is another critique of positive psychology, that this dichotomy, positive and negative emotions or feelings or whatever you can say, because this is happening. There are negative emotions sometimes which are very useful for motivating you to be more positive. So you cannot deny the negativity or the negative emotions in our life. Negative emotions at occasions are essential for normal growth. Positive psychology appears as value-laden psychology, and that is another criticism, that psychology is science. Psychology as a science has to be value neutral. That is the positivistic approach, positivistic philosophy on which the whole edifice of science has been built. Values of Western societies are highlighted: talent, genius, courage, character strength, positive traits, and so on and so forth. Now, thesis of self-contained individualism. What is self-contained individualism? Which is the foundation of psychology, Western psychology, that has been contained in positive psychology too. Because positive psychology, if you will read Seligman, he is trying to say that I don't want to replace psychology as such. This is just a change in the focus of psychology from deficit to the positive emotions. So this is that he is trying to pursue psychology. Now in this pursuit, if you will critically evaluate, then humanistic psychology has gone in back, which is the foundation of development of positive psychology, because Maslow has never gone to scientific psychology, and that was the criticism of humanistic psychology, which could not come in the mainstream psychology, and always lagging behind. Maslow has never talked about that science. He was talking about all sorts of qualitative development and, the whole pyramid of needs and peak experiences, that in what conditions peak experiences will be there, and so on and so forth. Arguments are vague and not well defined. Whatever the arguments which are given for positive psychology, the critics, they find it that they are vague. Vague in the sense, if you want to continue as a science, then you have to define, operational definition you have to give, and you have to conduct research accordingly. But the concepts are vaguely defined. They support a particular ideology, and that is neoliberal ideology. That is another criticism, that, well, we are prosperous, we are free country, we are a democrat, highly democratic country, and therefore we are free to pursue our own individualistic goals and see how they can be fulfilled. So it's a neoliberal ideology which they are following. Now, in an effort to change the focus of psychology while retaining all its underlying assumptions, and this has led to that you see, there is another paradigm of psychology which is taking place, and which has come in a big way. Most of you may not be familiar with this. If you read, long back an article appeared in American Psychologist during 1973, and this thesis was propounded: what is reality? Reality is always socially constructed. I cannot construct without the ingredients of my society. I cannot construct any sort of reality. What is reality? Even in science, the reality is a product of consensus. So if a group of scientists is pursuing some sort of thesis, they develop a sort of consensus. There is a long story. There are very good, interesting books. If you will read a book like Latour and Bulger, who has made an empirical study of a scientific lab, and he has shown how even those so-called scientific facts, they are constructed by consensus, by mutual agreements, and so on and so forth. Very interesting book. If you will come across, please read it. You will enjoy. You will be reading psychology, of course, but that's a different type of psychology. So possibility of multiple construction of psychological concepts. Now here, this is what I am trying to argue, that there are multiple ways of constructing psychological concepts as well as well-being in itself. Social constructionists say it's a relational account of thoughts, action, and self. Whatever we are constructing or trying to understand or having the meaning of any event or any situation, that is socially constructed, mutually constructed, and that construction presupposes a relational account of psychological facts and psychological concepts. So, if you are talking something and the other person with whom you are talking, if he is not grasping anything, then your dialogue fails. So it's only with dialogue that we come to reach to certain conclusion and develop, well, this is okay. Let's accept this as a truth. Now this truth is not some sort of eternal truth. It is going to change as our consensus and our ideology and our views are changing from time to time. So a thesis is emerging. It emerges, re-emerges, and there is in postmodernism, they are talking about deconstruction, because the days of modernity is gone. Now we have entered into postmodern era, where even the self, the identity of self is emerging, re-emerging, changing, from time to time. I mean, I'm not saying, okay, so this time is, anyway, I will just read. So this is rational account of thought, action and self. Meditation, so for social constructionists, they have gone through the literature of Buddhist literature, and they come to know that how they are defining meditation, you see. It's a marvelous thing. Meditation, in their practices, this is a method of avoiding taken for granted thoughts, concepts and conditionality. And you are taking the thoughts and concepts and without examining it. This we have done with Western psychology without examination. We have borrowed all those concepts and pursuing all sorts of those concepts. I'm sorry, I have to. I'm talking about indigenous psychologies, that is psychology that is suitable to the cultural context. And there are literature which is available about different type of psychology. So they are Mexico psychology, they are Indian psychology, and so on and so forth. And they have some different and some common points. Well-being in Indian psychology, I will leave it, escape it. I will come only with some work which I was engaged when I was at Chicago as a Fulbright fellow. I was working on rasa theory of emotion. Bharat Muni, you know, this is Ras Siddhant, which is familiar with all of us, Rasanubhuti. So this experience of rasa, when we have this experience of rasa, and you know, the whole goal of our suffering is ego, which is already elaborated so much, the ego attachment to the worldly things. And this attachment has brought several types of negative emotions. And emotions, whether they are positive and negative, in Indian theory, they are not worth, it's only bliss, that we have already discussed with Kiran Kumar. In this theory of rasa, in Natyashastra, there are 8 or 9 enduring emotions. I will just touch some point here. Rasa is a non-ego state of bliss, a meta-emotion. You are witnessing a drama, a Ramlila, with the story is already known to you. You have seen it several times. Still you feel happy and you enjoy that rasanubhuti. If you are sahirday, that is a person who has inculcated those habits to appreciate art and drama and poetry and so on and so forth. This rasanubhuti, the actor is not emotional. He is just playing somebody's emotion. Okay. The spectators are also not emotional in that sense. They are just witnessing some sort of drama which the emotions are depicted and staged. So ultimately, this is interpersonal domain in which that rasanubhuti takes place. It means it's a question of relationship. If I am giving lecture, or any one of us, and there is only 2-3 people are sitting in this hall, what will happen to me or to the speaker? So it's something like that. If there is only one person who is sitting and witnessing drama, he will not enjoy and he will not have that rasanubhuti. So it's a total social situation in which we live. Well, happiness in rasa theory, and even some field studies in Bhubaneswar town, the cultural psychologist people, they have done the studies in Bhubaneswar town. What is happiness? Happiness is a temporary affair. It comes and it goes. So happiness is regarded as an immature emotion of children. The children are happy, they are not bothered about much. But as an adult, then lot of things takes place, and happiness is just considered as a transitory emotion. Even in Natyashastra, it is a transitory emotion, it's not a rasa. What is well-being then? In these terms, is the contentment, that is santosh, and sense of well-being. That I'm not happy, but well, everything is good and well which is going on, like that. So emotion belong to trans-individual domain. Well-being comes out of detached attitude while engaging in action. This is, I will leave it. Now I will come to conclusion. Concept of well-being is rooted in the culture. The modern paradigm of development cannot ensure the well-being of developing nations like India. The positivist psychology may help to gain happiness, but without spirituality, well-being is suspected, particularly in Indian context. Western psychology had to learn more from Indian experiences. Thank you very much for giving me time. I'm sorry the chairperson is taking 5 minutes more.